So good evening. We're all here part of the Universal Church of the Masters Tuesday lecture series. And we're starting a new year and a new decade. So tonight we're going to do two or three things over the course of the evening. One is to learn a little bit more about numerology and apply it to our personal numbers for this new exciting cycle. And also we may have a meditation to help complete the release, not only of the old year, but the old decade. So we'll get to that as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about numbers in general and how they function in our lives. But we need to do a little bit of work, and those who are listening at a distance may want to later also get out some paper and pens and do a little bit of work so that you have some functioning numbers that we can work with tonight. And so this is a simple formula. I used Reverend Chris Miller's numbers, July 10th, his month and day, but I added them to the new year because we're working out our personal year numbers tonight. So again, you would take your month and your day, break them down to single digits. So in this case, the 10 of his birth date is 1 plus 0 is 1. And the 2020 can be broken down typically to a 4. I argue that I can see a 22 in this also, because 2000 is the long-term span, but the 20-year. But for simplicity, let's break it all down to a single digit. So can everyone do that on their worksheet? All right, and give you a moment to do that. Then when you add these three together, you get another number. He has a 12. So 1 plus 2 is 3. So for Reverend Chris, he's in a personal year of 3. And the way it works in numerology is that we're always running in 9-year cycles. We're always in cycles of 9. Please feel free to take as many notes as needed. And if you need more paper, please raise your hands. We have it. So in a 1 year, it's the very beginning, the fresh beginning of the cycle, and you're focusing on going in new directions and planting new seeds for the future. It's a year you can get things done. The 2-year is a cooperative, partnership-oriented year in which you do things well in dyads or in teams and by using intuition and the principles of cooperation and balance. So it's good to kind of jot down the overall meanings because these are going to come up for you tonight. A 3-year is a year in which the 1 and the 2 have created something new, which is the 3, almost like the playful child within us, affecting our creativity in lots of ways and multiple talents. But at some point we need to ground this, and then we come to a 4-year, which is organizing and making a solid foundation. To be very simple. From the 4, when 4's dogged organization becomes too much, we long for freedom and we enter a 5-year, which is a time of, it can be travel, creativity, and change. But don't burn all your bridges, but you can much more network and reach out intellectually. It can be a year of change. After such a year of change, sometimes we want to settle in again, and the 6th year can pertain to home, to bringing harmony wherever you are, to teaching, being that Earth Mother, Earth Father with wisdom. In the highest form of the 6th year, it can be a 33-6, which is like, we think of Jesus as 33 years in the body, master teaching, just as the 2-year can be seen as an 11, made up of 2 independent ones, yet somehow coming to the harmony and the cooperation of 2. So there are many nuances, but we're simplifying here. We're going now to a 7-year. And probably if we did our whole birth dates, we'd find a higher than average number of people born on a 7 for our entire birthday, because 7 is the number of the mystic and the person who's seeking after deeper truth. 7 can be a loner unless they're with others of like mind. And finally, what we think deeply about and analyze under 7 can turn into a successful outward 8, the person who's kind of an authority in their field. and is out more in the material field, having to seek a spiritual balance. After 8, that outward success-oriented year, we move to a 9, which is the culmination of a cycle. And there things come to us by divine fate, but we can't push them. It's a humanitarian year, but we may let go of some things, attitudes, people, and clutter in the closet as we get ready for another 1. So I think my intuition tells me, being we're coming in 2020, we're using our intuition, that it might be good for everybody to do something different right now. Also, an additional formula: take your month, your day, and the year you were born, and do the same thing. Let's get the year of destiny of your life. So your month, your day, and the year you were born, everything reduced to a single digit in those 3 areas, and then add the 3 together.
So if I get 10, it's a 1.
Correct.
Okay.
Any questions that people have, please feel free to voice. And then we could kind of go around the room and talk about what our master number, life number is. So once again, you break each segment down to a single digit, add the 3 together, but this time you're not using the universal current year, you're using the year of your birth.
So which is the master one?
And when you put all 3 of these together, that's really a destiny number for your life overall. Did you come up with something?
Well, for the first one, I came up with 7. That was when I used 2020.
The personal year, okay.
And when I did the second one, I came up with 1. I came up with 10, and then I dropped the 0, so it's
Adding
1.
all 3 segments together.
Yes.
Okay, so this whole lifetime for you is a shift of direction, perhaps, into being all you can be, being the leader that you are, being able to pioneer and show the way for others. What did you come up with, John?
I came up with a 7.
A 7,
Mm-hmm.
which I predicted. I said,
Right.
and I think I'm a 7, and Chris is a 7, so there are usually quite a few 7s in a
Yeah.
metaphysical room.
Apparently so.
For women, the 1 is really important too, because we had been in a more patriarchal cycle where women couldn't actualize their leadership abilities and all of their talents. And this just strikes me as a time in your life where you particularly can help manifest that. If you want to be a little more, know a little bit more about your life, also remember that these 3 numbers that you have, if this is your birth year, these 3 numbers are cycles of your life. So, Chris, what your birth year adds? What does your birth year add to?
1952,
Which adds to?
which breaks down to 17, which equals to 8.
Okay.
Is that correct?
I'm going to assume that that's the correct. So then you have a 7 and a 1 is 8, and 8 and 8 a 16-7, and that's a 7. When you get a 16-7. That's an old soul who really needs to be on their spiritual path for things to go right in their life. So we have a lot of 7s. But all of us then, even in our reincarnations, we're kind of somewhere in one of these cycles. So you're kind of starting maybe a new series, if you believe in reincarnation, a new series of experiences or transcendence. And the rest of us are in a 7, which is a time in this lifetime to more deeply assess where we've been in past lives and to redirect our life toward that purpose. So I just touched lightly on the meanings of numbers. There are really good books. I think that Juno Jordan was a good author on numerology. Here's one, The Romance in Your Name. And there's a lot of interpretation of personal years. So we'll get to that. And also, this is a lesser known numerologist, Michael Moore, who was one of the members of my mentor, Jessica Madigan's Philosophical Roundtable conferences. And he was a young African-American numerologist who brought a lot of unique and deep interpretation. And I bring up being African-American only because in the Edgar Cayce readings, it was implied that the Master Jesus could have lived before, and one of his incarnations was in Nubia, African American mystic who did a lot with numerology. so I bring that up. Another book by Juno Jordan and Helen Houston, Your Name, Your Number, Your Destiny. So there are lots of, I think that numbers can be really accessible to us if we are practitioners or ministers, in that in a very short time, in a simple way, if someone comes to you and you'd like to know a little bit more about the kind of person who's coming and what some of the cycles of their lives might be, whereas astrology, you might cast a complex chart. And you can do it in more complicated ways in numerology, but you could also do it very easily and get a kind of a sense of the person before you begin maybe an intuitive reading or before you even do some healing work. And you can kind of say, well, let's look at your numbers for this year. You know, where are you? And it opens the discussion. So I think that can be positive. So I was just going to look at a little bit of a reading on numerology itself. They've been recognized throughout the ages that names play a vital part in directing and influencing the destinies of mankind, and that they represent character, human nature, experience, and divine authority. The Bible teachings repeatedly bring out the importance of names. The days of creation were numbered according to the activity taking place day by day. The Lord often changed the names of his chosen ones, this author writes, to represent the task or service to be carried out. At times, even before birth, a name was chosen, as in the prophecy of the Christ. Numerology also recognizes the potentialities and the spiritual command hidden in our names and the numbers comprising them. And that would be true also of our birth dates. And numbers play such an important part. Everything is named in numbers. Houses are numbered, streets, telephones, calendars, clocks, birthdays, contracts, and statistics. We live in a mathematical world and do not realize it. So it's thought that the early mathematicians actually used numerology because they were in a more holistic cosmology. So it was not divorced from spirituality. And Pythagoras and other mathematicians also believed in these meanings that were associated with the numbers, just as astrologers knew somewhat how to chart the planets, but also associated meanings about the vibrations of our human life. And in the Edgar Cayce readings, it's thought that our soul may kind of come about several opportunities for being born, and we look them over. If you've ever in your life met somebody later, some older people had children maybe, or you had a friend whose parents you identified with, you could have been born into that family. It's possible that you thought about it and were drawn possibly to come in at that time. So in the case of Chris, who's here, Reverend Chris, we've been doing some research on a possible past life for him. He was born in the Pasadena area, and through many instances of synchronicity and because of the training I've had with my spiritual teacher, in doing a reading for him, I had the feeling that he had something to do with the film industry. And I looked, as I've done for others, at every actor who could have been born before he was, died before he was born, and born after what my special daughter boyfriend, who's very psychic, said was his last life before that. And so two men emerged, and it was very puzzling to see which was which, because he had characteristics in common with both, but kind of settled on one having a strong karmic pattern. But that man died only less than a year before Chris was born, and he died in a sort of unexpected way. When you leave the body suddenly, you may come back faster than you would taking a rest period. Jessica thought, she thought maybe people had a 33-year rest in honor of the Christ. Jesus became the Christ 33 years in the body. But my research with my friends, over and over, I find about 12 to 14 years, and people are back. So sometimes a bit longer, and sometimes when there's been an interruption, quite quickly. But the soul, despite all this, somehow helps magnetize the name that they may want to have, and waits for that moment of birth in the wheel of things. my younger daughter, Megan, is very bright, would tell me as a small child that there was a timekeeper and there were interlocking gears. And she remembers there was a moment when the gears interlocked that one could go. I would recommend the movie that's very funny, Chances Are, with Robert Downey Jr., Sybil Shepherd, and Ryan O'Neal, about reincarnation and about that time in between. It's so much fun. We ought to rent it, have it some night as for the Vespers or maybe even one of the talks. They did research a bit with Casey. It's just a funny and warm account of this moment about trying to come back, and so. But it all comes back to the numbers, because why were we born on that particular day? There's a reason for it, because Casey said life is vibration and motion. And so we somehow vibratorily were drawn to that instant, that moment in time. And as we look at our birth date, it gives us a lot of clues. To get the personal year, we're taking our month and day and we're aligning it with the cosmos. So, so we have 3 sevens tonight and a 1. And but there are many other cycles of your life as well. One can look at, in the actual birth date, this as being a cycle of Saturn. Saturn returns to the place it was when we were born about every 29, 30 years. It shows up again. So I would say that these are 30-year cycles. But now that people are going to live longer, much longer, we may have to consider recycling, because I'm visiting a 103-and-a-half-year-old woman who was born in the teens of the last century. So she has well used up, her up to 30, late 20s, late 50s, and then another cycle, late 20s would be one.
30, 69.
56 would be another. The next one we're looking at is like the later, probably 70s or so. And so how many cycles will she have?
3+, almost 4.
3 plus. So, because if this one's late 70s and she's 103 and a half, she could have had already another.
That'd be the late 80s, I think, wouldn't it?
Would it be late 80s?
I think so.
Again, I'm in my intuitive side, not in my mathematical side, by the way. So if she comes to her late 80s here, then she's in this cycle again.
Yeah.
And so we're going to have to look at it in terms of life extension in a more, in a broader way. But, so finding out about, so let's kind of, I wanted to, before we looked at this year's personal year, I wanted to lead a little bit of a guided meditation, if everyone's open to that. So let's get as comfortable as we can get. Floor is okay if you like it. I do. I like carpets.
It's cold.
Yeah, that's,
It's recorded.
yes. There is heat somehow here. Did you want the heat? Are we okay? All right, so let's just take a deep breath. I'm going to be sharing a meditation that I was first exposed to as a young person in 1974, and it was at one of Jessica Madigan's conferences at Asilomar. And the then Marcia Hunter, who became Marcia Hunter Mossman, was leading a group of young people in what became the Family of Man, and she was mentored by Jessica, so we did this around the turning of the new year. What we're going to do is work on first the year that was. So we call up energetically last year, 2019. We're going to go backwards through the year. It's not necessary to remember every event. We're calling this up on a soul level, but sometimes certain events will come to your mind. And what we're asking is, what was the deeper lesson I was learning during that month? And the deeper lesson I was learning ultimately during the year. And we'll even come to, what have I been learning in the last decade? And that's a new part of this. So we call now, from the skeins of time and space, the year 2019. We begin backwards with the holiday celebrations, even here in this room in church, Christmas, Hanukkah, Yule. Perhaps there were meetings with loved ones and friends. The holidays can be a joyful and sometimes a lonely period. let's take a moment and just let the energy of the month come up and ask, what was I more deeply learning? And that will come from your soul level. And then we release the energy of the month into the eternality. And we're going to weave backwards into November. You may travel a little bit between months, differently than I. But let's move backwards through November. We associate in this country with Thanksgiving. This is a time of Scorpio and Sagittarius birthdays, just as December is Sagittarius and Capricorn. What were the lessons on a deeper level? Was our soul showing us as we walk through the earth experiences of November 2019? Moving back from November into October of 2019, that includes Libra and Scorpio birthdays. That includes Halloween, Hallowmas, or some call it Samhain, a time when the veil is thin between our world and the next. What might we be learning? And backing up now into September, month of Virgo birthdays and Libra birthdays, month of the fall equinox harvest time, returning to schools, teaching. What are we learning? What did we learn that we maybe weren't even aware of? Rolling back from September into August of 2019. Very warm month, Leo and Virgo birthdays. Candlemas, the first bread festival, the hint of what we're harvesting in our life. What was going on a soul level in August? Moving back now into July. month of Cancer and Leo birthdays, time of the middle of summer. What was the soul learning? And releasing into the skeins of time and space these months. But there's more to be known. It will be revealed and brought to us through dreams, through inner knowing. Moving back to June, the time of the summer solstice, the longest days, just as we're in the period now of the longest nights in early January of the newer year. What was going on with the longer sunshine? What was being learned? After moving away from the Gemini and Cancer month, moving back into May, the month of the Divine Mother, the month of the church conference of our Universal Church of the Master, and reflecting on that month and that experience and what we were learning. And moving back now from the Taurus and Gemini month of May, moving into back through April of 2019, the month of Aries and Taurus birthdays, just as June has a combination. So we move into back through April, and that's a month of spring, the sun moving forward, time of taxes and thoughts of our progress in the practical world. What were the lessons of our soul then? And also Easter falls between the March and April periods, and Passover and other spring equinox type celebrations that occur in March. And releasing the April energy, we go back into March. We experience again Easter, the Pisces, Aries cusp of activity. We reflect perhaps on the Christ saga, the teachings, being crucified in a way in the eyes of the world to be reborn in deeper truth. All that we experience around those holidays and those times, and the month that comes in like a lion and out like a lamb. And the Ides of March, what were you experiencing and learning on the deepest level of your soul? back now. As we release March to the Akashic record, we move back to February, month of St. Valentine's, of Aquarius birthdays, and Pisces. What were we learning in February? Months of thoughts of soulmates far and near. Moving back from February, that Aquarian and Pisces month, back to January, a year ago, to the month of Capricorn and Aquarius and New Year's resolutions, reflecting back to 2019 in January, what we might have resolved or hoped to accomplish. I'm calling up the whole year of 2019 and asking Spirit to bring it closer to our understanding. What were we each really learning through this last year in our sojourn on this planet? I'd like us to now call up the year 2019 and just maybe even with our eyes closed or open, just lift it up with our arms up, and we just release 2019 into the skeins of time and space. We bless it, thankful for what we've learned, aware of where we may have not always listened to our higher self, and grateful that it gave us the opportunity to learn, and that tonight we've had an opportunity to know more about what the year is about, and now we release it into the skeins of time and space and forever into the Akashic record. Blessed be. And so we can gradually come back to this present moment, opening our eyes slowly and coming back into the present. If anybody wants to share something about that journey and what the process was like, feel free to do so. I'll talk first to say that while leading it, I also reflect, and I reflected once before, but when I really ask, I seem to get an underlying common theme coming to me in many different forms. And for example, I thought about the December month and not having much family of origin in my life, and yet finding opportunities where those of like mind, including some who bear a connection to earthly family, some of Joe's, my late husband's child, grandchild, and great-grandchild visited, and my late brother's nephew had a child, and there were many blessings along the way. But also knowing, when I saw both children, one of whom I have some biological relationship to and one more of a spiritual tie, I realized that I'm really more part of the universal family, and I think John relates to that too. It confirmed that. I had nice experiences connecting with both, and I think I was learning some reassurance throughout the year about my role and about being needed and my who I am, and learning more in this stage of life, how to regard myself in a positive light as a person of wisdom. So I think that came up a lot of ways. Did anyone else have any glimmers of hunches or things that floated to you as you dwelt upon the year? that give you maybe a theme?
I think I fell asleep for a little bit.
Good.
It was very relaxing. But I remember when I got to May, I was thinking how I was ordained, and that was such a big step for me, and has really me on a wonderful path.
So talking about in case that the path of ordination this
Mhm.
year, and sometimes when we seem to rest or go to sleep or meditate deeply, that's working on a soul level for us and processing. But that ordination was really the key event of the
Turning
year.
point. Right.
And
turning point for me.
what is it saying to you that you went through that process? What does your soul say to you about that?
Oh. My soul is so happy.
Happy.
It is so, it's really pleased with my path.
Pleased with your path. So it probably is in harmony with your number one and your real purpose this time around, that this is an event that's very much on path with what your whole many years of your life path is and will be. And you probably do utilize that one energy to be all you can be through the process of your ministry, I would think, at this point. John, did you have any?
Well, the teachers often remind me when I fall asleep, I'm much easier to work with.
Okay. Okay. Very
so
good.
they're always happy when that happens. I'm not, but they are.
Okay.
Yeah, I felt like as we went past through each month going backward, that we were giving up unnecessary chaff, just unnecessary containers and pieces and
Okay.
stuff that was kind of in the way. It was kind of going back into the grand scheme and being reused and redesigned. So I felt a freedom.
So looking, letting go of chaff and unnecessary burdens and acquiring freedom, and letting go so that we can go forward now and establish a new pattern for this year. Did you have anything to add, Chris, from the times you've done it or the soul lessons there?
These release meditations have been beneficial in realizing and let go kind of some of the challenges that shaped our growth. Everything is necessary, but it does seem that some is unnecessary. And for me, as my talk is supposed to be about forgiveness, it's about forgiving others and ourselves. I think that forgiving ourselves along the way for missteps, misunderstandings, etc., is an important lesson for me to learn in my life overall. And so to forgive ourselves as we would have others forgive us.
Is everybody comfortable being in the video? Is that okay?
They're not in the video.
No, they're not, but they may be
sound
so. I'm
wise.
just
Yeah.
checking. I was checking. So I'm going to add in. So here's everybody who's talking, and thank you for your comments. We really appreciate them.
People sometimes they say, I can forgive, but I can't forget. And my
Yeah.
answer is, I think we can forget too.
That's a good
Well,
one. for
in the
talk.
big picture, yes.
So, so the next thing I just wanted to talk about for a minute before we again do our new numbers, we're at the turn of a decade, which is very
Yeah.
unusual. So I've been thinking just a little bit about how do numbers tie in, because we're going to be in that 2020 decade. So how that lines up with your for this personal year may be more important, and there may be what we learned tonight may apply a bit to the decade. But if we looked at the last 10 years now, and we did it consciously by kind of talking together now that we've had a little refreshment meditation, what do we think, collectively or personally, what has this last decade been about? If we look at the whole last decade, so we're looking at 2010, say, to 2020, and reflecting on what might and how it's going to tie into some of the number changes. So if you did last year's numbers, and this might be fun to do for a minute, let's sort of look at last year's numbers, which were your birth date plus 2019, and it's always going to be one number back. So what is your personal year this year? Your birth date plus 2020, your month and day.
Right, I think it sums up to 4.
4. How about
Mine
yours?
was 7.
7. Okay, mine's a 6. so you can roll it back a number to know what last year was about. And
Oh.
that was a 5. And so, interesting. But we've been in a, we've had the prefix of, yeah, so we're just, anyway, so we're moving into a whole new number cycle with 2020. In that we've been in the teens, 2010 through 2019, and now we're in a different mode, and we certainly we pick up a strong 2 that's going to stay with us. So we just kind of look at the difference between the 1 and the 2. 1 has to do with people striking out, being leaders, being on their own, but 2 collectively brings in a balance aspect for cooperation, intuition. It's not a weak number, it's a number of using some of the tools that we might need in a world, say for countries to cooperate, for people to hear each other's views. And so that's just sort of in our collective pattern. But what have each of us been doing in the teens after the millennial? If we look at 2010, say, through to 2019, what do you think that's been about?
I think a lot of it has been recognizing our responsibility to care for our planet, which wasn't there 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But it is now. More and more people are becoming aware of what they do and how it affects the planet, not just themselves and their families, but the whole environment.
Well, with that 1 going, we've certainly seen a lot of factions sort of fighting for themselves and not always coming to cooperation. But anything you might want to add, Reverend Donna?
I think the 2010 through 2019 was a time of crisis for me. You know, as Bill's health declined, it really, I was not at all, looking at the world. It was all
Internal. So sometimes our path is parallel to the world. We've had a world in crisis in a lot of ways. Anything that you might say, Reverend Chris, about the last 10 through 19, either personally or on a global level?
It's been a time of great change for me. One thing I did want to comment on is in the current year, 2020 equals the number 4, reduces to a 4, and in 2021, that current year will equal a 5,
Mm-hmm.
and then 2022 a 6, and then up through 2025, which will be a 9, and then in 2026, that will be
A new
a
beginning.
1, 0, or a 1 number.
Could be a new beginning for in the
And in
world.
2027, it will equal an 11.
Mm.
So this added to the people's birth date and month numbers will change significantly at that point. Plus,
Well, we're a circle of wise women and men tonight, so we're all sharing in this, looking at our own lives and then looking kind of globally. My husband passed in 2009, and so had to redirect and certainly learn more lessons about independence and independent periods of independent living and independent management of many, many things in my life. And that 1 energy is there, and I imagine you, Donna, as your husband's self declined, had to become more self-reliant or be that leader of everything. So, but also there was creativity in my path as well, because my birthday added, like last year, 2019, there was a lot of 3 in creative energy. I'm sorry, in some of the cycles of it. So we're just kind of looking at a shift from the 19-1 to the 22 collectively, and it does. The 20 is also, it's a number that can be associated with the divine feminine influence in the world. There are lots of interesting things that we could look ahead to.
What does a 6 stand for?
A 6. How do you have a 6? How
My
does
wife.
She's in a 6
Should be a 6.
personal
I think.
year this year.
Yeah, for a personal year.
Okay, well, let's go a little more extensively into the vibrations of the personal year. This is a good time for it. Okay, so let's start out, and it's good to learn a little bit about all these because you may know people even if it's not your year. So let's look at a number 1 personal year, such as Donna's experiencing. Between January this year and January next year, your affairs are making a new start. You're entering a new cycle of experiences. But before we go into the personal years, remember that somewhere you're going to have a personal month. All of us will. That's a one. How the personal months are determined is you take your personal year, which is a one, and then you say, well, what month are we in? We're in January, so that's January's always a 1 month. For you, Donna, then 1 + 1 is 2, and you get your personal month. And that would be true. You're in a 4-year, but there'll be a time when you'll, like in the 6th month, 4 + 6 is 10 is a 1. So all of this is going to apply. If you have a very important date and you've got to make a decision, you can actually break it down to the personal year, then the personal month, the personal day, and even the personal hour. And so this is a good time to do it. I don't know how many people
So
would,
if my personal month is a 1,
right?
and my and we're in a month of 1, then I get a 2. So is my personal month February?
So you're in a 1 year, but you're having some 2 vibrations in this month. Let's say you're overall going to be self-actualizing, starting new projects, being kind of a leader. But in January, because the 1 and 1 make 2, you're still going to go about this with some of the skills of the 2. Your ability for diplomacy. So it's you're going to one path color it a little bit by the nature of the month. Does that make sense?
Well, I'm still not clear on what my personal month will be.
Your personal month will be a 2, because you're in a year. Your personal year is 1, and January is the 1 month. 1 + 1 is 2.
And so 2
in
is
February.
February.
Yes, yes. Then
Okay.
you're no. If February is the 2 month added to your personal year, what would that be?
My personal year
It's
is
a 1,
1,
and you add the 2 month of February. So what do you get?
a 3.
Okay, that'll be probably a little more creative month. So it's always adding your personal year to the current month.
Okay.
Okay, so let's talk. So now when I talk about ones, that can apply to your year or your month. So let's all learn about 1. Okay, a 1 personal year or month. But in the 1 personal year, you're making a new start, entering a new cycle of experiences. One thing I know is if you're given a choice between doing what you always did and something brand new, always pick the new thing in a 1 year. Where you had to last year, a lot of things were culminating. There's certain years where you absolutely have a will over destiny, and in a 1 you do. So have courage, make plans, avoid inertia or indecisions. Don't drift or have fear of the future, because you don't want to lose out on a beginning time. Sometimes it will need organization to get desired results, strength of purpose, clear thinking, broaden your activities, and meeting circumstances which come up unexpectedly. Call upon your executive ability and originality of thought this year. Don't be afraid to take a chance with a new idea or plan. It's up to you to do thinking and planning for yourself and others. You may contribute, for example, to the board in those ways or to others. During spring and summer, take good care of your health and that of loved ones. This is for the 1 specifically. Year, become more constructive. In April, there's a break, a chance to move ahead. May, rest and have poise. Say very little. August and September brings things to a head. And the fall opens opportunities and decisions you might not have counted on. Keep moving forward throughout the year. December is a practical month. Be wise and get down to work in a practical way. The colors to win this year are flame, copper, lilac, and crimson. And let's see, your scarf appears to be crimson. All right, so those are good months for a 1. Okay, anybody with a 2 personal year, but it also would apply to our personal months and so forth. Okay, for the 2, and we're talking about being in kind of a 2 decade, so let's learn about 2. Success and happiness depend on tact, diplomacy, and cooperation when things aren't running smoothly. What year are you in, Chris? Your personal year?
3
That's
year
right.
this year.
You've been learning last year, hopefully, tact and diplomacy. So the 2 year, the 1 person takes the initiative, but under the 2 vibration, you're gaining through sharing and waiting for things to develop. Time is the keynote. So there might be periods of delay for things to come to the surface. We can grow quietly. It's not a good time to be dominant and aggressive, or trying too hard. It's good to cooperate with circumstances in order for there to be peace. So in the world vibration, we want leaders who are willing to cooperate and let things unfold in a more gentle way. And that's the way you can win. So I won't, since there isn't a 2 here, I won't go into the individual months, but people can win under 2 with gold, salmon, garnet, prune, and cinnamon. Those are unique. So 3, Chris is in a 3 personal year. Put your best foot forward and do everything possible to improve yourself. There's a quickening force operating in your life. This is a time to be creative, inspirational, be imaginative, and with imaginative ideas and ideals which flood your heart. Fasten on dreams and visions which flash through your mind from time to time. Improves finances and happier associations. Not drift along, though, and want things without effort. Or don't allow yourself to be disturbed emotionally about what others do. Otherwise, it could be a wasted year. But on the other hand, if you make a real effort to express and carry out some of your ideas in a constructive manner, this can be one of the happiest years of your life. Friends will be of importance and value. They will help you if you act in a friendly manner that the year requires. Practical results may not be apparent at first. They come definitely later in the year and especially next year. But it's a good time to develop your creative dreams. It can be a colorful period. In winter and spring, friends may cause you some annoyance or emotional disturbances, but don't allow this to get under your skin. Try to understand your emotions and the things others do. Make a definite effort to avoid worry or fretting about little things. This is your optimistic and cheerful year. You can gain far better results through being joyful and happy than through moods or worry. Much can be yours this year, dependent upon your inspiration and good cheer. Don't be extravagant or waste emotional energy or money, but do try to scatter a little sunshine and faith wherever you go. Don't talk out of turn, however. Through talk, gossip, and careless speech, unhappy problems could develop. But there's a personal opportunity through words, lectures, and writings expressed in a constructive manner. During the early part of the year, make sure all of your relationships and associations so as not to get on a detour. Even this creative year calls for good common sense. Talk your ideas over with others to help you find the way, but don't be talked out of them. Your numbers indicate a quickening of events in February. June brings many things to a head. July shows a new direction of plans, and September can bring the quick opportunity to do what you want to do with friends helping. December carries pleasure but duty too. Win with rose, ruby, amber, and russet. So far we're wearing a lot of reddish colors. Okay, anybody with a 4 personal year? Is that you, John?
Yeah, let's see.
That's your month and day in 2020.
Yeah, I'm 4.
Okay. A very practical year for you. Between January of this year and January of next year, you have work to do. The plans and inspiration of last year must now be put into more concrete form. Not as likely to have a lot of time for personal pleasure. Circumstances from time to time will force you to look at things from a material point of view and stay on the job, whether you want to or not. But don't mind this, because by the time the year is over, you will feel considerable satisfaction in which you've accomplished, even if you've had to keep putting your shoulder to the wheel. If you manage well, face the facts, and get down to business, you can lay a foundation for security and lasting conditions in the future. Being orderly, organizing, using management skills in all matters pertaining to business, property, agreements, contracts, papers, legal matters. Details should be attended to with patience and honesty. As spiritual practitioners, we can also talk about becoming solid in some of the work, the spiritual work that you want to do. Mm-hmm. Maybe you're writing to, get organized with that. Mm-hmm. The practical side of the year can bring health and financial matters of people. It could be people around you placing some responsibility on your shoulders, yours or others. Attend to these things lovingly and attempt to get orderly results this year, that you may have the freedom and fuller life which next year promises. It's a practical year: buying, selling, trading, building homes, lives, properties, everything that has a practical foundation for the future. this is, we've talked about in UCM, I don't know why it's coming to me, one of the things we've talked about at the board is helping people be able to, in some small ways even, make our church part of their legacy. That would be a good thing for people to working on that project, and we're open to people who, skilled as you are, to help us with present that to our treasurer so our church can go on. It's a great thing. And that would be a 4 kind of thing to do, like get better organized and see how we can create in our legacies, as I've done, even in my, modest will and trust. I made sure there was a portion to my church, and that's something that, as we have a maturing group, we can all think about in a positive way. Sometimes our legacy really is in contributing to values and ideas we want. Those are our children and great-grandchildren in the world. So maybe you want to give us some input on that. At times, finances and other things can seem practical or slow, but through good common sense, you can meet all requirements and come ahead. Let's see. Each year brings its own requirement. Next year is your freedom year. During the early spring, strike a goal of work and routine and stick to it. Consider health matters in March. June shows a new trend of events in a practical way, with the possibility of decisions to be made. As this is a practical year, August shows the best influence for vacation and pleasure. September brings practical challenges but can show you results. October in its number brings the first showing of the change, activity, and new conditions of next year. December carries a quiet force. Keep poised and have faith, for Christmas will bring reward for the work you've done during the year. Colors to help you win are blue, green, emerald, silver, and coffee. And you're here with a blue shirt.
That's
so
right.
That works out well. Okay, so we've got that. Now for 5 energy, I'll just do 5 in general. 5 follows 4 in numerology, and that'll go on in your months, or it'll go on in your personal years. Changing conditions and eventful happenings will add new life and color to your undertakings, forcing you to step with progress. After all that work and application of the building 4, change and freedom for routine and unexpectedness should be agreeable. There's a little bit of uncertainty running through the year, and you might feel a bit unsettled, but on the whole, it offers you a nice opportunity for advancement and progress. If you keep alert to what is going on in the world and an open mind, clearing up old conditions, you'll renew your life and clear up old conditions for personal advancement. Change and the new are keynotes for the 5, personal year or month. Without it, change, there's no growth, but to live does not mean just to sow wild oats. It means to plan a definite goal for advancement and be resourceful to make adjustments. You may feel restless under 5, impatient with things that move along slowly, or experience resentment toward those who hold you down or bind you. Watch this, for haste makes a waste and could lead to deep regret later in life, in the cycle of life you're now passing through. It seems to be necessary to make every effort to open a channel for progress, not through quarreling or burning bridges. If you feel that progress can come only by breaking up old conditions, make sure you do it in a constructive way and do not jump impulsively from the frying pan into the fire. All changes should be to the advantage of others as well as yourself. So break up a bit of your old routine and turn details over others with wisdom and discretion. Changes, new contracts, new opportunities may confuse you, but accept them all in the spirit of progress and advancement. So 5 is a push year, that life is exerting upon you. Get fun out of meeting conditions, show versatility of thought, travel, move, do something to freshen up the home, social and business activities. Colors to wear for the 5 are pink, cherry, wisteria, and claret. Okay. All right, so now we're getting to a 6. I'm actually going in a 6. Between January of this year and January next year, there are responsibilities and obligations and duty for service is the keynote. Unselfishness, service to justice, charity, and humanity should be your motives. You can harmonize. You have to keep harmony to keep condition and associations going well. If there's a difficulty between you and loved ones, try to erase it. Love can come to you if you're generous and loving enough to receive it. Through expressing love and sympathy, you can even gain financially during the year. A strong desire to get settled may be in your mind in business and domestic affairs, and by the end of the year, you may have some satisfaction in this, respect by talking things over with advice of friends, relatives, those in authority, making adjustments, considering the good of others under the 6th year as well as yourself. You can realize improvement in the actions of your life. Keep your ideals high, avoid feelings of resentment because of unfairness. Give even more generously than you receive to bring about the improvement in more settled conditions which the year holds out to you. You can maybe have the opportunity to instill ideals in the hearts and minds of others, especially younger people, if you live true to them yourself this year. It's a care year of some sort. It could be to family, business responsibilities, or health, but money should come to meet these obligations if you accept them as a privilege and don't make them a burden. Others may impose upon you or try to take advantage of your good nature, but even so, with effort and good business judgment, you can make fine progress. Get settled in your business affairs for future improvements and bring about more satisfactory living conditions and personal relationship. The action of the year is slow, but that's the way ultimate good can come. That might seem more noticeable during the spring and up to June, but from then on, your plans can push forward. Fall of the year may still bring responsibility and the need to help others, but by October or November, you should have worked things out to a definite conclusion, pointing to more time to yourself next year. March, according to your numbers, brings deep conclusions and decisions. June is a holiday month, July for practical matters, which you manage, September, home affairs to be lovingly handled, and December is a wind-up. Colors for you to help win are orange, heliotrope, henna, and scarlet. So I'll have to get some orange on, some heliotrope, which is probably gold, henna, which is a rust color, and scarlet. Okay, we have a couple more years to go. The 7 personal year, or some of us have a 7 birth force. Now, your birth force was your whole
7. Well, 120 and 2020 was 7. So I was in my 7th year.
Okay, so we're going to come into you are in the 7 years.
Right.
Okay.
In the 7
And your
year
birth force was a 1.
1.
And your birth force was a 7. My birth force is 7. His birth force is a 7, and you're in a 7 years. So let's really look at 7.
Okay.
7, what will happen is you'll get a lot of people who walk to the beat of their own, drum, who are deep thinkers. And the fact that we have a lot of 7 energy tonight fits. This is a great office for a 7. Number 7, personal year. This is a very important year for you, as so much depends on a right state of mind. And I would say if you're a 7 in this lifetime, it's a very important lifetime. It can be a sort of sabbatical year, and you should spend more time than usual in quiet pursuits, interested in the more intellectual phases of living. Quality should be your standard. Reach out for more understanding of life. Try to gain intuitive insight into your affairs. Between January and January next year, in your case, you're likely to be conscious of the desire to do more and specialize your knowledge and talents. You may benefit at times to being alone, away from hustle and bustle. If you can do this and can rest, it will build up your health and improve your mind. What you think is of great importance, for there's much to think out. And it's better for you to say very little and think clearly than to fight for your rights, argue, or attempt to explain under a 7. It's a mental house cleaning year, and you should set your mental and spiritual house in order. You may have many interesting and unusual experiences, even at times alone and through conditions over which you seem to have no control. But you're laying a foundation for inner strength and power, and for soul realization coming, which will make big changes in your life. Out of the year will become a goal and plan of great importance that moves you forward. Your desire to understand yourself, your more quiet and studious attitude may be misunderstood, and you might be criticized or condemned because you seem so determined to think for yourself and make better use of your mental faculties. People in your home, business associates, and social life may be hard to understand, and you may experience unreasonableness in others. Make sure, though, you're not unreasonable yourself, for this could cause misunderstandings and disappointments. It's almost like the number of the old soul, right? Reason things out with fairness, understanding, and poise, and you'll find unexpected rewards. It'll be better, too, to allow others to work out their affairs without interference from you. You're in the school of life this year, under higher discipline, or in this lifetime. If you seem to be out of the average pattern of things, it's only to awaken a deeper understanding of life's finer relationships. Avoid any feeling of confusion, humiliation, or repression. This can be a waiting time, but there's no real limitation which you cannot overcome through poise, faith, and inner attraction. In fact, in spite of the seeming problems, it can be one of the most wonderful years of your life, or one of the wonderful lifetimes. If you carry the right method, it can bring you recognition and carry you to the front in your sphere of life. Don't try too hard or force issues. Go through transitions that bring a release of some sort as a reward when the year is done. Colors to win this year are purple, brick, and pearl. And you have a purple hat. You have a purple hat. So we have two more years and numbers to explore, and the next one that follows 7 in the cycle of our growth is the 8. After that deep reflection, in the 8, one feels the ambition, or the 8-month ambition stirring, desire to better financial conditions, be businesslike and efficient and practical, a year for an advancement in your standing. Conditions not always easy. You have to use good judgment. You might put on a fighting spirit and go after things, but you must take great care to direct your energies properly. Brains count. Have pick, in directing your work aspects, but organization and reorganization are the keynotes to success and advancement. People under 8 sometimes are really moving toward some kind of a goal that may even come in later. If you're efficient, turn over details to others, use your head. The year can end with an improvement in position and or finances. Don't overestimate your ability or the value of anything you're dealing with. Avoid sentiment and emotion. Be businesslike. Don't drive too hard, for you can overdo and upset your health. Even in love, do not be too dominant. Face the fact that what you're doing all year, and quietly and determinedly try to elevate and improve your position. You should find those in authority recognizing your ability. So, colors to win are canary, yellow, buff, tan, opal, and ivory. So those lighter colors. And finally, the last number is the 9 personal year. So you just finished a 9 personal year.
Right.
9 is where many affairs come to a head, and you realized a completion and fulfillment of some of your dreams, which you did through the ordination. Mm-hmm. It's a closing cycle of experience, one you began 9 years ago, leading to a beginning and new start, which is here now. It's not a failure or a sorrow, it's really a reward. Let go of the old and undesirable that year. Make way for the real and worthwhile. If something is trying to hold on and ask for freedom or decides to get away, be understanding. For if you try to hold it, it may get away anyway, especially if life sees fit to make this change. But be tolerant, compassionate, and forgiving. Then you'll find this is one of the most wonderful years of your life, of love, sympathy, understanding, and fulfillment of your plans, benefiting you practically as well and in loving appreciation. And it goes through the months and then says, it's not a year to start new issues. The tide of life is out rather than in. Keep busy and accept opportunity if it comes to you. By September, you may begin to see the way clearly to the future. Wear colorful garments, avoid black. The 9, it's a humanitarian year, and it also associating with publishing. It's kind of the culmination of what we've done over all the other years, and it brings us sometimes rewards we can't expect, but we don't force it, and we also let go. So there's that. I also had one more
colors.
Pardon me?
It
Oh,
did
the
say
color.
the
Don't wear
colors.
black. It said under 9.
Okay.
Black is not the right one. I found some fun things in just for us to enjoy a little bit in Michael Moore's numerology booklet. Might be a fun thing to reprint one of these times. And I think he talked about one of the books talked about the first letter of our name, because our souls do sort of choose our name vibrations too. Let's see which book that was in. And I waited for my kids until I had a dream, because I figured they were choosing, so I tried to wait and let them choose. And in the case of my second daughter, she came about 9 days earlier, and I didn't have the name. But I kept, before she was born, I kept thinking of names that had 2 M's, like Marjorie Morningstar. That was the 70s. She didn't want to be named Morningstar, but I thought of it. anything that had two ends, and I kept thinking of it. And so finally, after she was born, she came early, and a day or two later, I still hadn't named her, but my sister, who kind of is in a different, often in a different path, did call and said, oh, that she dreamed I had a baby and named her Megan, because she knew the name Megan and I didn't, and so I instantly knew that was the M.
Mhm.
You know, that was the M. So I just thought, and I also dreamed my first daughter could be either Vanessa or Veronica. I dreamed it. So in this case, I knew the soul was trying to get through, and I thought I'll just get out of the way and wait. But
I did that. I waited with my my second daughter too, because I wasn't really sure of her name, and the hospital staff was so upset. They kept pressuring me. This child needs a name. This child needs a name.
but you
And
weren't sure.
I wasn't. So finally, I just picked a name, and that I liked, and Bill liked, and his mom liked, and she likes. So.
And
But
that
it
was when
was-
you were still in the hospital, or at
Yeah,
home?
but it was just annoying that the staff
Was pressuring because
Yeah.
it hadn't come to you
Oh
yet.
my gosh, they were freaking out that the child didn't have a name.
Not often, but there are cultures where the name is given later in some kind of a ritual. Yeah. So let's see.
My relatives back east were very small-minded, and my mother wanted to name me David and told everybody that. And one of the other women had a baby 2 days before I was born, and she named him David and called my mother and said, "I've already taken the name, so
Okay.
you can't have it." And you can't believe how many people in this life have called me David. It happens all
Really?
the time. So I walk in,
Oh.
"Hi, Dave, how you doing?" It's
So you
close.
could have been David,
Yeah.
and maybe we're trying to be David.
I don't know.
Weren't you born on your mother and grandmother's birthday, Chris?
Yes.
Oh, mother and grandmother.
Yeah, my mom was born on her grandmother's birthday, and I was born on her birthday.
Wow.
Keeping the tradition.
Yes.
So let's look a little bit about. Let's see where we are. I just see if there are any. Are there any questions so far, based on all this explosion of information on? But think of life as think of us as in cycles of growth, and these are repetitive cycles of growth. In a 1 year, you kind of begin and go in new directions. In the next year, you bring that more in what you've learned through that into partnership and cooperation, and that sharing brings about like almost the birth of a new kind of child of your creativity. The 3 year, under 3 years, it's a fun and happy year. But the only thing is that sometimes people can get a little jealous of you, so you don't want to take a criticism to heart because you're in your playful child year in a way. And I've noticed Chris just since this year has just accidentally fallen into an art class and a writing class, and he hadn't done it in a while. So, and other creative things in his life, music. So that's a creative year, upcoming. The 4 is take that creativity and kind of get it grounded. Maybe you were working, John, on developing a lot of writing, but maybe this is the year you're going to say, I'm going to try to get enough of it
Mm-hmm.
and get it in form and maybe
Mhm.
edit it some more and write the parts that are missing, do something solid with it.
Yeah.
And then the 5 year is, okay, I've been plodding along. Now it's time for a little freedom and networking. What am I going to do? And the 6 sort of, the 6 where you've been being the free spirit but a little isolated, brings you into more connection with others, but you have to keep making, giving service and making harmonious adjustments to benefit relationships. The 7 says I need time for myself to go back and really deeply think from my spiritual basis, and redirect my life. And then I can take that out in an 8 year into some kind of greater success with my goals and wishes. And finally, the 9 says now it's time to reap the rewards of it. I'm not pushing forward, but I'm going to reap the deeper lessons and the benefits while letting go in order to begin a new cycle. So it's just kind of a cyclical pattern that we see in the months, and we see it in the hours and days. And when you're working with people doing intuitive readings, it's very helpful because to me, it gives you a concrete anchor. You can use many tools before you read for someone, stones or astrology or numbers, or so many tools that can be studied. But the numbers to me are accessible, and I've been in many psychic fair events where I try to just do the numbers. There's noise everywhere going on with didgeridoos and incense and everything, and just being able to know the person's number for a minute before going once again into a reading state. Edgar Cayce was advised not to do more than 2 deep readings to preserve his health, and during World War II, they sent him bags and bags of mail from around the country. People wanted to know what would happen to their soldier far away, and he overdid the readings, which partly took him out of the body. So psychic fairs are something you do carefully and maybe not at as a deep a level. So the numbers are a good tool to work with, and that helps. And just understanding people who come into our life and what they're about. So, but also Michael Moore associated the number with a planet. So let's just go through that again a little bit. If you happen to be a 1, he associated that with the sun vibration. So you were born under the 1, and then that is the center of the solar system. It governs your individuality. It talks about the motives and urges that dominate in our life. 1 is the number of the creator of everything in the universe, of unity, harmony, self-mastery, achievement, expression, and rulership. Number 1 people can be energetic, loyal, independent, self-assertive, dominant, creative, original, and full of determination. And sometimes they have to cultivate this sympathy and cooperation. But
Do you cycle through these also?
yeah, I mean, every time we're in a 1, we can make that association with the planet. The 2, now the world has been in a kind of one-based decade in being, and including some of the faults of 1 in the world might be countries being unsympathetic, unwilling to cooperate, more self-assertive and independent. It looks like we're going to see in the world in the next 10 years more of the 2 vibration, the moon. Now, interestingly, we associate the moon with the feminine in our culture. But when we had the goddess-centered cultures way, way back that we can find out about in books like When God Was a Woman by Merlin Stone, The Chalice and the Blade by Rian Eisler, I wrote a book, Edgar Cayce and the Eternal Feminine, which talks about that. And it's here in our church headquarters. When the feminine force was at the center of culture long, long ago, then the roles for men shifted and were interesting. And there was a strong god called Brother Moon, and he was the protector of the weak. And it took the masculine protector into a nurturing mode instead of a dominant mode. And so in that culture, the man vibrated to the 2 energy, and there might be warrior women or women at the center. So we can fluctuate, perhaps. We say in our culture masculine, feminine, but it has reversed. 3 is actually now, Michael Moore says it's the planet of Jupiter. So that's good luck. And you're in the 3-year, Chris. It's where you can, places you might seek opportunity and profit from them. Professional decisions and work you can succeed. Generosity, wisdom, good luck, happiness, success, and fortune. Creation and perfection. So the Trinity, high spiritual energy. The 4 is associated with Saturn. Now, for Edgar Cayce, Saturn, he was slightly different on astrology. We call Saturn the structured, sort of father time planet. But he also said it's the planet to which all insufficient matter may be cast. And I just watched, before coming here to relax, I was watching actually one of the History Channels, how they hunted after World War II, and they caught a couple of the Nazis that had done so much harm, and they came to a legal trial. And as a student of history and wanting justice for the weak, it sort of made me feel good because I thought of all the helpless people who suffered. Well, the planet Saturn, just my teacher would say, well, what happens to a Hitler or someone, or somebody who was very misdirected and caused great suffering? That between lives, Cayce said, our souls may sojourn, I don't know if it's like a rest or something, in the astral vibrations around the planets in our solar system. So let's take maybe a person who was a nun or monk and they never married or had a family. They served others, but they were really missing the vibration of Venus, the personal love. So they might sojourn around Venus, sounds like Star Trek, and they'd come back in with Venus sort of high in the chart, where they might attract in early life some of the things that were missing in that life. Maybe they'd like to have a partner, or they'd like to have a family, or whatever. They might attract that vibration. Similarly, one who maybe made some karmic mistakes might end up in Saturn, which is a more limited kind of vibration, and it sets up some of the karma that has to be met in the next life. And there was someone who Jessica heard about her, who wrote to her, who said that they had a child born quite disturbed. I mean, from an early age, and when they could talk, this child was striking themselves a lot, hitting and injuring themselves, and then apparently told the mother, "Forgive him, forgive Hitler, Mama." And that sounded like somebody who'd been on that other side of things and was going through a Saturn experience, maybe somebody who got caught up in that movement and hurt others. So it's a bigger picture, all of this, when you look at past lives and we've lived before, but the numbers are helpful. They can give us a lot of clues about where we've been and where we're going in the coming year, but also kind of in the pattern of our lives. So then Mercury is the number associated with 5. A messenger of the gods, Hermes, the senses, our attitude toward the environment, the intellect, verbal and writing skills, associated a lot with the number 5. Sensuality and pleasure, the 5 senses, restless and impulsive. And Venus is associated with 6. So I like that. If I'm going into 6 year, I'll take it. Okay.
Yeah.
It's your emotional antenna. The gentle and refined characteristics, generosity, harmony, and love, and sensitive to beauty, and so Venus energy, domestic, devoted, sensuality. Neptune is associated with 7, the mystical side, and we talked about that, the mysterious, the creative, spiritual aspirations, even of nations in the world. Inspiration, intuition, ESP, 7. Victory of spirit over matter. And it's can be honor, triumph, vision, deep wisdom, religion, and philosophy. Sounds like you're really, Donna, in the right place right now for your 7 with our church and serving our board and serving as secretary, invaluable, and serving in so many ways as minister. The Uranus 8, the rebel planet, the exciting, the innovative, originality, individuality, futuristic, he said. Power and cosmic polarity. So, see, and 9 is associated, he associates it with Mars. I don't know if I would, but he said it's evolution and survival. I don't know, I might think of 9 as having some Neptune qualities too. So interesting. Pluto, the number 0. So, anyway, just there are lots of different books that are on numerology, and they also tie in with astrology and the other big numbers. If you study numerology more, you might want to get your personality number, your destiny number, your birth number, personal years. There's one that's made up of all of your vowels in your name, one of the consonants. There's one where you add up your name. What you do to do your name, you would have a chart 1 through 9 and put the alphabet under it. Like A is a 1, B is a 2. So you have like a 1 through 9 at the top. You run the alphabet under it, and then you can add up your name. So I think LYNN is L is a 3, and I think Y is a 7, so that's 10. And then I have 2 N's, which are 5s, and they add to 10, so I've got a 2. And I'm also born on the 11th. So this 2 number and 11 vibration is going to come up. And one of the books I brought, had that. So we can kind of wind up with that. Let's just take the day we were born on. So I mentioned mine. What day were you born on?
20th.
The 20th. So you and I have a 2 vibration going on. And you're interesting because you've got the 1 and the 2. So you're both the assertive and the cooperative, it sounds like. But if you're born on a 2, it's a middle cycle of your life. Of course, if you live to 135, it's probably going to be another cycle of your life. But the 2 is can be a gracious, friendly influence, cooperation and persuasion, keeping an open mind, seeing both sides of an issue. Attract people to yourself. You will attract favorable conditions. Don't only be a lone eagle, but learn to work with others. Okay, collecting information. Anybody else? What day were you born on, John?
The 15th, that'd be a 6, I guess.
A 6. Okay. So you see how these numbers just keep coming up in different ways in our name, and that's why it's good to learn the whole composite of it. 6. And so Chris is born on the 1, so everything to do, the July 10th, which is a 1. So everything we said about Donna, that leader, that individuality, that's all really you, and not being overly dominant, but, leading forth, pioneering in new ways. Okay, so let's do a 6. 5, 6. You're born on the 6th.
I'm going on 15th.
The
So it'd be a
15th. They didn't
6.
have that one, I think. A 15th birthday. This number presents an interesting contradiction. While you're cooperative, even submissive to loved ones and those you work with in a position, you still resent domination. No one can lord it over you.
That's true.
You would chafe under a harsh, dominating treatment by a supervisor or a member of your family to the degree where you would actually be ailing. Quit a job where you feel uncomfortable and out of place with coworkers. Your vocational qualifications run along professional lines rather than in the commercial field. If your academic education has equipped you with special learning, you can make a diplomat, a lawyer, a lecturer, a teacher, a physician, but have not the innate gift for surgery. The sight of blood would offend your artistic sensibility. A home environment is necessary for your health, which is generally satisfactory. Your musical or artistic leanings, writing, are more pronounced than your scientific talents. That really nailed you.
That's 100% correct all the way.
And what is your exact birthday? Is
January 20th.
20. Let's see if we can actually find our exact birthday as we wind up here. This is a good book too.
Yeah.
Okay, a 2.
That's exactly right for me, because there have been 2 times I've been working in jobs when they've said to me something like, we don't think you should be here. And I say, okay, I quit the next day. I don't have a problem with that.
20 birthday. An extension of the 2, Donna. This number causes you to live in the emotions, inclines you to need companionship and friends. You dislike the idea of living alone. Hence, many of this cycle marry early in life, establish a well-appointed home, prefer to live in the country. I don't know if this is accurate for you. Occupational training and a thorough education is beneficial. A storehouse of practical knowledge will always come to your stead. In vocational jobs, attend to details for which you seem to have a special knack. You may own a business in association with others, a congenial small-scale business in which the major responsibility is assumed by others would suit you. Musical ability, love of the arts, some special talent are often in evidence. Jimmy Stewart was born on that day. Okay, so Chris, you were born on the 10th. Yeah? So here's the 10th, a 1, a 10. This number is composed of a 1 plus 0 and represents an extension of the basic 1. Perhaps that is why persons born on the 10th day of any month usually have more than one iron in the fire. Certainly you should have a vocation and an avocation. Your promotional ability and your creative vein are remarkable. Therefore, your number advises you experiment with untried ventures. Example, Helen Hayes, actress, born on October 10th. I'm actually born on the 11th, so I'm going to read it for fun. And 11s and 22s and 33s bring in, they have the 2, but they also have other dimensions. An 11 birthday. This is a difficult number to operate under, for it requires constant self-discipline if you wish to fully exploit its hyperpotential influence. Try to steer by a level keel even under nervous duress. Keep emotions steady. This vibration tends to cause nervous tension. Therefore, many who are ruled by 11 are erratic and moody. The mentality is apt to be brilliant above the average, but allow your intuitions to function also. Don't rush toward extremes, but travel the middle lane if possible. Unusual vacations associate you to a T, okay? And did we miss anybody? We got it all.
No.
So I think we have covered, we've done a lot with numerology tonight, and basically
Thank you.
saying that we can make it useful to us in our lives. But as Ronald Davison in his great little book on astrology said, and it's true of numerology too, the stars and the numbers incline, but they don't compel. It's our will, and our choice and our spirit that are at the center of it all.
They're tools to be used.
Any comments or questions?
No, I found it very interesting.
Oh, you did?
I think we ought to have a quick, brief prayer for this year and the
Let's.
coming decade.
Please lead us in that.
That'd be great.
It's looking at you.
Wrong person. Okay, go ahead.
Oh. Dear Lord, please let this be a wondrous year for all of us, all the people on this planet, all the people that have passed before us. May we enjoy the rich love, happiness, and abundance that you planned for us. May we be forgiving of ourselves and others. May we be a positive influence wherever we go. Bring your love into everyday activities and into other people's lives. Lift them up. Let them see your grace. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Anyone want to add?
Thank you.
Well, we're glad to have been an intimate on this wintry night, but a very meaningful collection of souls here exploring numbers, releasing some of the old energies, and learning how we can do that. That releasing the year meditation is a nice one to do,
Yes.
either alone and in groups. And it's great to look ahead and see what our numbers might be inclining us to do. But of course, our will is uppermost. And we thank you for UCM Church, those listening at a distance, for being part of the Tuesday lecture.
This was Reverend Lynn Rogers.
Oh, that's right. I'm Reverend Lynn
Thank
Rogers.
you, Reverend Lynn Rogers.
Thank you.
Thank you.